Hello, my marketing and entrepreneur friends. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Marketing podcast, where I, your host, Katya Allison, get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. Now, today, we're going to dive deep into the world of personal branding and its impact on both executives and their companies. And joining me in this episode is Loreta Tarozaite, the founder and CEO of Loreta Today. Hopefully I did not butcher her last name. I apologize ahead of time. Now, Loreta brings over 2 decades of experience in broadcast journalism, video storytelling, and corporate marketing to the table. You will be able to tell she is polished. And in this episode, we're really going to explore that pivotal role of personal branding in today's business landscape. Now, she shares her insights on how executives can leverage their personal brand to build authority, enhance visibility, and really ultimately boost their company's brand equity. But we're also going to discuss the power of video content in shaping personal narratives and personal brands, and the challenges of hiring the right talent in today's competitive market. So, whether you are a seasoned marketer looking to refine your personal brand or a business leader navigating the complexities of executive visibility, this episode is packed with actionable insights just for you. So grab your favorite bevy, sit back, and let's dive into this kind of enlightening conversation with Loreta. Let's talk marketing. Very excited to have you on here. We almost dove straight into the podcast before even hitting record, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Katya. I'm looking forward to this exciting and fun conversation with you.
Absolutely. Well, let's have the audience get to know you a little bit. I'd love to hear, what was your first marketing role, or what you would consider marketing or in that area?
Yeah, my first marketing role was probably transferring my skills from being a TV journalist to actually telling business stories through video. So that was that transition and that leap that I made without even knowing that I'm actually doing marketing, because my background is Lithuanian. I was born and raised in Lithuania. So when I moved here, I was already an adult. So I was doing my career in television back in Lithuania. And when we moved to the United States, I'm like, well, what do I do with this knowledge? I'm not going to go on TV. Nobody's going to hire me to be on the U.S. National television, right? And it's taken several years before that materialized, that transformation of my skill set into what I have been doing for a lot of years now as a producer as well.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't know that I was actually doing marketing. All I wanted to do is just tell business stories and people stories and help, executives and leaders just be more visible, become better at communicating through camera, coaching them. And in the end, I realized, when I started working in a corporate environment, I realized that video is just one part of the vehicle within the big marketing picture. And then I started just sucking a lot of information, learning a little bit more from that corporate environment that I was in, doing a lot of learning myself, attending conferences, and started connecting different dots about what marketing strategy is, what are the vehicles, what are the platforms, the channels, and how do we connect with audiences? And obviously, I will always have my love and passion for video. This is the core vehicle I always go to as a pitch, but not everybody is comfortable to be on video.
Which I have a ton of follow-up questions about that as well too. But, that's where you started. What specifically are you doing now? I mean, it sounds like it still lives in kind of the video world and tying all those things together, but what specifically is it that you're doing?
Yeah, right now what I do, I help companies that are on the growth stage to establish marketing departments and function at large, right? Sometimes when companies go through transition period, be it acquisition or growth, like very quick growth, the team is not keeping up with that growth. So there's a lot of things that get lost in translation, so to say, the process, confused, who's talking to who, how does information translate from, the development team to sales to marketing, right? So what I help with organizations at large is to help establish these processes, align the people, remove the silos, figure out that bigger sort of corporate brand strategy and presence through implementation of the department if they don't have it, or tweaking what they have right now and identifying the gaps that exist. So that's on a company level, when it comes to executives, I help them with their own presence. elevation. So be it video, again, that's where the video plays a role, be it stage presence or how to communicate with media. So those are kind of three prongs where I help individuals, to get better in how they communicate and how they come across, in a digital world.
What do you love about what you do?
I love the complexity of things, you
Okay.
know. I consider myself, and it's actually in part of my messaging, my own personal brand messaging. I just love the chaos where I can just clean things up. Because
There's
not a
something
lot.
it's satisfying, right? You're like,
Exactly.
okay,
Let's roll
done.
up the sleeves now. Where do we start? So I love the complexity of things, right? Where you have to untangle, you have to figure things out. It stems from my background as a journalist, as a news anchor, right? When you
Yeah.
have all this flood of information coming at you in any single day, and you have to distill and find commonalities of what the story actually is from all these resources and sources, right? And then you have to present that on a national television. Obviously, there's producers that we work with, directors, of the news development, but that's swarm of information and you have to distill it, right? So that's how
Yeah.
I look at these complexities within business, right? How do we distill to simplify the process, to align people so that we communicate? What is our story? What is our message, right? How do you as an executive come across to the external world? Are you always hiding behind the walls, or are you out there, building those relationships in the industry, being perceived as a thought leader who represents the company, so
Yeah.
that's what I love, I guess, which is a weird thing to love, the
No,
complexity of it
I
all.
I feel like that definitely that touches a nerve for me because I think there is something very satisfying about taking a look at like it's very it's challenging and there's chaos, but there's also something very satisfying when you
Yeah.
are able to do what you're talking about, which is like distilling all right, this is actually what's the most important of all of the things that you're saying, right? Like all of the things that you're saying, and this is the best way to position. Like when you are the person that it can walk into the room and drown out the noise so that the true story comes out, there's something very poetic about it as well too. And I know that probably sounds very hyperbolic of like
Yeah.
as marketers we're not magicians, but it is true. It is like wow. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't I didn't know how that was going to be done, but now it's
Yeah.
done. Well,
Yeah.
what conversely if there's anything that you could pluck out of it, what would you pluck out of it? What do you not like about what you currently are doing?
I think I don't like the minutia of the to-do list that never ends.
Mm,
I don't like being dragged into things that feel so small in the big scheme of things, but they still need to be addressed. So we all
yeah.
grow, through our careers in these different roles where you start, dealing with all this minutia, right? You start
Yeah.
small, you start figuring things out small on a smaller scale. But the moment you feel you can help solve bigger problems for the company or their leaders, then you're like, this is distraction. I need somebody on my
Yeah.
team who can just take care of that so that I could think, explore, get inspiration from others, have that time for discovery, so that you can stay creative, can stay up to date with technologies, can learn new tools and skills, allow yourself to go to the conferences and talk to people who have these new ideas. When you're drowning in that, it becomes a secondary thing. And that's what I hate, it's it's
Yes.
it's when my learning stops. I really hate that. I feel like
Yeah.
I need to reduce the scope so that I could start learning again.
How do you know what or how or who to offload the kind of smaller stuff, right? Like I think and part of the reason that I'm asking that question is because I think it's not for lack of wanting to offload, right? Like, oh, I know I don't want to do this. But it's also identifying the right person. Do they have the right skill set? What do I need to do to get them so that I can offload this I can do that. So like I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, yes. So this is one of the most challenging things in any business, be it you're a
Yeah.
solopreneur driving your own business or when you're helping a company to grow their business, is to find the right resource for the right roles with the right skills, and and that requires, the way I look, the way when I let's say let's talk about, from my business perspective, when I
Yeah.
try to find a talent for my business to help me out, you know it's it's not about what they say, but I test them in action, right? Because anybody
Okay.
can say anything. They can have AI write their resume. I don't care about any of that. It's actually what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
How do you understand my pain points that I just described to you? What did you get out of that? And how can you, without asking me what to do, can solve my problems? So it
Yeah.
goes back also on a corporate level, right? When we need to build out the teams, it's the same thing. You have to find the talent who not only is eager to learn the business to a level where they can support and grow in it, but
Yeah.
also what are the core skills right now that don't take up a lot of ramp up time, where you just put them in and they're rolling no matter
Yeah.
what business they're managing, right? There's certain skills that you already have to have that
Yeah.
do not require you growing into the role, but rather you spend that growing into the role by understanding the business better.
Well, and some days it feels like you're looking for a unicorn when you're trying to identify who is that right person that is,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, and
yes.
it's, I think that as I've progressed in my career, I've gotten better at identifying and doing exactly what you're talking about. Like let me test you with this. If I ask you to do this, what do you bring back to me?
Yeah.
Like how much, and then also, what do you do with the coaching that I give you? Like, what do you do with the, not coaching, but well, yeah, no, the coaching,
Yeah, the
the
tips,
feedback.
mentoring.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. What direction do you go into? And for me, I'm always looking just for incremental change. Like, what do you do with it? It's not how far you go with it. Because there are going to be those superstars that come in and just knock it out of the park. And you're like, oh my God, I just want to duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. Like you are just a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
I don't ever have to worry about that. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
and
fascinating.
it is really, I through my own personal business have realized how challenging it is actually to find these people. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I was trying to source the right designer. And it's like they tell you, oh, I get it, and then you receive the design. It's like, did you not see the brand guidelines? Did you not understand something? Like, you're in a visual world, right? So I come from
Yeah.
visual world, so I always, I can intuitively say, oh my God, this is off. So
Yeah.
uh and same, with writers, with any type of role, right?
Yeah.
You have to really, if you see the potential and they take that feedback, then
Yeah.
I see hope. But if you give feedback over and over, it's the same feedback and there's no improvement, then it's like pivot, shift, on, moving on. Just cut the
Yeah.
losses right away.
That's so true. We could probably have a podcast just on this potential subject. I mean, we've talked about where you started. We've talked about where you are, the good, the bad, the ugly. Now, I'm really curious how you are staying up to date on trends. Are you on social networks? And if you are on social networks, which are the ones that you go to for education, inspiration, aspiration, anything in between, or even entertainment? Right? Where do you go from a social perspective, but also outside of social? What else do you use to keep up with the trends?
My go-to platform is actually LinkedIn, right? Because it's a professional
Mhm.
platform. I seem to find a lot of resources already there from professionals who are experts in the field. So I keep
Yeah.
saving the links. I keep, adding them. Oh, this is a good topic for the future, or this is a good resource for the future, right? I can see opportunities for this client or that client, right? So LinkedIn is my go-to for sort of the learning aspect of it.
Yeah.
The entertainment, usually, I just dumb watch things, as I call them. They're not as energizing in my
Oh,
brain, but
yeah.
it's more like I just want to relax right now and not think about anything. So I
I
would
don't
do
wanna think.
either.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would either watch Netflix or I would go and just scroll on Instagram, just look at fun videos, funny videos,
Yeah.
just dumb watching, as I call it. Now, obviously, a big aspect is attending industry conferences, reading up on the new technologies, on the blogs, on the platforms, listening to content, on YouTube or podcasts. Those podcasts actually is my go-to as well. I really
Yeah.
like podcasts overall. There's a lot of great content that you can consume, on the go, and it's very easy. You don't have to be tied, to a location, like with a book, for example. So
Exactly.
yeah, so those would be my areas, where I try to find either an interesting conference or a meetup, or just even by meeting new people and conversing with
Yes.
them, you already learn.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
always, and for me, that's the goal of the podcast to begin with, right? Is for anybody to walk away with one nugget. You don't have to like the whole thing, but when you are able to walk away with something that you take either honestly into your personal or your professional life. More specifically, your professional life is what the
Hmm.
goal would be. But it's amazing in conversation what you can pick up and like what you can then apply the next day or even the day of that you're listening to it of like, oh, I've never thought about it that way. I
Hmm.
also love podcasts as well too, because it is something that you can do while you're getting ready, while you're like cooking. It's such a multitask thing. Sometimes I'll do it to like, or I'll listen to one to motivate myself to fold laundry. So like that to me is my little hack.
Laundry podcast.
Exactly. There should be a podcast of this problem. Well, there probably is. There's so many
Yeah,
out there right
probably.
well, so let's dive right into just kind of the strategy part of the conversation that I wanted us to have, which is really
Hmm.
focused on just kind of elevating your executives to have a presence and what that tie is to your brand. Now, as someone who you professionally help technology executives elevate their personas and their presence, I think it's really essential, not just in the tech industry, but across all industries to really do that. But what is that value for executives to have that strong personal brand? And what's the value for them personally? But also, what's the value for the brand?
Yeah. So first of all, it builds authority. Simple as that. Authority and
Hmm.
visibility to you, by extension to your brand. I met a lot of executives who were reluctant to do anything on LinkedIn. They'd be like, "Well, I have not done anything before. Now, if I start posting, all of a sudden, I'll be on the spot, and people are going to start questioning what's going on. What am I doing?" And we start slow with people, adjusting to the idea on being a little bit more visible, right? But
Yeah.
when they do have a taste, they do see the impact because the conversation starts, right? Anybody
Yeah.
in their network starts commenting, starts asking questions, or they have side conversations, conversations when they meet with customers, right? Customers see that impact. They may not be necessarily saying anything online under your post, but they see you more frequently. You're on top of mind. By extension, your company is on top of mind. So
Yeah.
that authority, that visibility that you're building, through your personal brand, is has a huge impact on the company. Really huge impact. And I don't remember exact numbers, but I read somewhere the statistics that people normally engage and trust the brand more if they see their leaders, present online, if they talk, to you. It builds a little bit more energy inside the company because it's not only employees seeing you as a leader, but also they see you from a different perspective as well.
Yeah.
There's this distance internally, even, right? Not even externally between customers, but even internally. Sometimes, employees just don't know what the vision is from their executives, why they're driving certain decisions in the business, right? So by being there, out there, by sharing those thoughts, externally, that ties back to the internal conversations as well. It just becomes that much more clearer. Now, of course, we can talk also about internal communication strategies, right? How that can also
Yeah.
be another amplifier to support, all this external exposure.
Now, and I couldn't agree with you more. To me, it is like the personification of a brand, right? When you can put a face with a logo, right? Like all of a sudden it does from a thought leadership perspective, from a brand awareness perspective, I think it holds a ton of weight. I do wonder when you are advising executives, one, are you advising them to post themselves or are you advising somebody else who will be posting for them? Like, how do you direct them on the content and like who is doing the posting? Because I would imagine that you run up against, you know, people saying like, well, I don't have the time for that. Why,
Oh,
and what am I going to do?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It all depends on the executive's comfort level. Okay. And on the resources inside the company, honestly, as well. There are
Yeah.
platforms specifically designed for executive social presence elevation. There's like the quorum people involved, through the approval cycles reviewed to make sure that whatever is being put out on executives' behalf is actually representative of the company as well as the executive's voice and tone.
Yeah.
Now, again, depends on the size of the company. It depends on the resource. This can go both ways. Either an executive is comfortable themselves to take these baby steps and say, hey, just give me the content and I'll just do it myself. Because obviously that requires sharing the credentials, login, and all of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? And not everybody is comfortable in doing that. On a bigger organization, from the big organization's perspective, there are teams who do that. They just have to hone in on the voice and tone of the executive, right? And I honestly, no executive in big organizations will find the time to review every single post. They just have to
Yes.
enable the teams to understand what they stand for. That's where the one of the important things that I didn't mention from personal brand is to understand your values, right? To understand what you stand for, how you communicate, that connects back to the brand. So leaders need, as long as they express that internally to the teams that they entrust their accounts to, it's a matter of just honing in on that voice and kind of internalizing what that leader would say, right? There's a lot of repurposed content that can be done. The presentations that could be repurposed. What does not require them, to be spoken on their behalf, right? But yeah, it goes both ways. Smaller companies, small organizations, middle size, they take baby steps on their own, and
Yeah.
larger organizations, they just invest into the tool. Obviously, if the smaller organization has the resources, they would probably opt into doing that as well. So the goal that I normally have is just to get them out there, first of all.
Just do it.
Just do
Start.
it.
Just start.
Yeah. So that's the first part of the conversation that needs to happen, right? And understanding where the blocks are, right? Why do you not want to do it? What's preventing you? Why do you think it's going to hurt versus help? Just trying to get them through this even psychological aspect of, understanding that it's not
Yeah.
about hurting your brand. It actually will help you as a leader, and it will bring more visibility to your company and bring that connection, bridge that connection with the audience as well, and with the customers, right? You have to have those conversations, and this is one way to have those conversations.
Do you advise not just on posting, but also in engaging as well?
That is a little bit tricky.
Okay.
The engagement aspect for sure, it
Yeah.
ties now to the PR aspect, right? How
Yes.
deep an executive has to be, especially if there's negative posting, if there's something
Hmm.
that's a little bit tricky, you never want your leadership team to start conversations with directly with the audiences, especially if it's a slippery slope, situation, because that just causes PR hassle. You
That's
want to
true.
kind of shield a little bit and discuss internally with the team. Does it make sense, addressing it? Who should address it? Maybe there's a PR person undersigned, talking, in the thread on behalf of the executive, but you don't necessarily want the executive to have these conversations on a consumer level. If it's a
Yeah.
business, business to business, so to say, leadership, let's say somebody in the network as a CEO commented on you as a CEO, right? Great
Yeah.
to have this partnership, or great to use your services, or whatever the case is, right? Then it's normal to kind of do a little bit of that engagement. But let's say on a consumer level, when somebody has no ties, is just a regular follower, says something, I adhere towards, the risk of, let's not open the can of worms, and let's not start conversations online,
Yes.
with people. Yeah.
Let's not create any more work than we need to for ourselves when it comes to exposure, right?
Yeah.
There is
Yes.
that whole adage, there's no like kind of bad PR, but there is bad PR.
There is bad PR, correct.
There is definitely bad PR out there. I do want to go back to something that you had said at the very beginning that I put a mental pin on, because I do think this is also something that I run into a lot with anybody at the executive leadership level, is that not everybody wants to be in front of a camera from a video perspective, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I know we just talked about posting, but there is such a value in the video content, in doing the face to face, in doing the podcasts and entertaining in that kind of manner. So what do you tell an executive who's like, no, I'm not a spotlight person. I'm not a spotlight person. Let me just do my business.
Well, we will get you there.
Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
So, one of the biggest fears that any person has when it comes to camera is it feels unerasable, right? It feels like
Yeah.
now it's really you. It's not some mystical person behind the post who has written the post and published on your behalf, or written the byline and published on your behalf, right? It is you. And that is the biggest fear that any executive has, because whatever comes out of your mouth, however you behave, whatever insert words you have or ticks you have going on, All of that is exaggerated
Yeah.
at tenfold, when it comes on camera. So again, depending where they are in their career, C-level, they always get the coaching, right? When you're at that
Yeah.
level, you just have to master that skill. You just have no excuses. Stage, camera, media presence, period. You just have to be there because all eyes are on you, right?
Yes.
When it comes to a little bit kind of middle management or startup founders, right? You have to practice a little bit to get comfortable hearing yourself,
Yeah.
looking at yourself, find small opportunities where you could engage on camera, record a short video, try to publish, see how it performs, not performs, but how people react to it,
Yeah.
and that can help build confidence, but definitely one of the biggest stoppers is the fear, just the fear. But what I tell people that I work with and whom I coach is, you know our goal is to not make them look or sound bad. Our goal is to actually help them be their true selves on camera,
Yeah.
translate that, and there's a process that we have to go through to get them there, right? And of course, some executives would just give up and like, you know what, it's just not for me. I can't. And so be it. So it depends on the corporate sort of executive communication strategy as well. Who are the spokespeople, on behalf of the
Yeah.
organization? Some people are just much better at honing in on that strategy and being good communicators, being engaging, on stage, and some are just not there. And they may never get there, and that's okay. They're just
Yeah.
not the front face of the company. But those who are, at the top, they just have to.
They do. You're gonna get them comfortable. That's what it's about. I do
Yeah.
have a very like content specific when it comes to what it is that they're posting. And I know it does really depend on the organization and then the executive as well too. So let's try to hone in on like on LinkedIn, I'm a CEO of a mid-sized brand and now I want to level up my presence on LinkedIn. Is there a recommendation on kind of the type of content that you're posting out? Like I'm assuming that they're not posting out. I see this all the time. The pictures of the tweets
Mm.
that are on LinkedIn, right? Like so you're saying something without saying something. Like I'm showing
Yes.
you what I said in another thing in like 70 words. Or do you think that it is more valuable to have something a little bit more thoughtful and a lot longer of a post? Or maybe there's something that's in between, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
The length is always a debate, right? We live through the age where it's like, oh, the shorter the better. Now people are really engaging more in quality, even if it's longer form.
Yeah.
There is that engagement as long as you are providing value, to the readers or to the listeners. People will engage no matter how long that content is, as long as they're
Yeah.
receiving the value. So that's the ultimate advice. Don't and I've seen as well, with the executives that I've coached, where they do exactly that, or they would comment on somebody else's in their network, uh feed under the post, great job. Well, if you really want to position yourself, you would say more than that. Why is it
Yes.
great job? How does that tie back? Did you work with them? What about it is great? Just add a
Yeah.
little bit of that. Your own perspective is very important, and especially in the comments, because that obviously appears in everybody else's feed, right?
Yeah.
Um, and of course, like I said before, video. LinkedIn has the biggest opportunity when it comes to video. It's undersaturated when it comes to video.
That's
Building
so
your
true.
friends, yeah, building your presence through video on LinkedIn is really the way to go these days, because we have YouTube, we have all these other platforms, Instagram and TikToks and everything else, right? But LinkedIn is still very low on actual personal brand type of content, and I personally, when I made the decision, to elevate my presence, I just picked the platform, right? I told myself, you know what, I'm just going to do it on LinkedIn. I don't care about Facebook or Instagrams. I by default just publish the same thing, but I don't pay
Yeah.
attention to those platforms because that's not where I want to be with my engaging with my audience, and that's not where they reside. But I've noticed, that whenever I published video, it was just that much more impactful than the post,
Yeah.
itself, because it's a voice. It's you connect on, on a human level, right? They see your intonations, they see your accents, your stumbles, how you pronounce words,
You're
at least in
very
my
real.
perspective. Yes,
Yeah. You're
exactly,
very
exactly.
real.
And coming from TV background, I thought I would not have those fears, but I also went through the same sort of, oh my God, now it's going to be me. Like people will see
Yeah.
me, I still had a little bit of that fear, no matter, it didn't matter if I was good on camera or not, it's just more that psychological, that I'm now fully putting myself out there, and I have no idea how people will react. I may be saying something stupid that people don't care about, but I'm putting it out there, and I'll see what
Yes.
happens. And it definitely, I can see video, it has much more engagement. Now, of course, there's all these algorithms, and LinkedIn changed their algorithms. So all these impressions and everything, they're much more honing in on the quality of content as well, and the reshares, the engagement level of it. So you always have to sort of just understand the science, and I'm not the one who always understands the science. I work with people who
Yeah.
do. I'm just using my platform almost like a test ground for myself, and see, okay, what
Yeah.
changed, what's different. So uh yeah, and obviously image based, right? One other way of engaging with the audience, is a lot of times leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, they go to different locations, to different events, right? They can just publish something from that event, something that they've learned about, right? Their perspective, why it resonated with them. I started actually doing that as well myself. And
Yeah.
and it's very interesting. It's not giving your own content necessarily, but you're pulling other people's content and sharing your perspective with it, that ties
Yeah.
back to your company, to what you believe in, to what you're selling, what you're doing, as a business. So those are easy, low hanging fruit, that one can do.
I love that. And I think what really resonates with me about what you're saying, I feel this way about all of the content that you put on your website as well too. There's always this debate like how long should a blog be? It should be as long as it takes for you to get the message across. And I think taking that on to like your presence on social media and what it is that you're saying, it's adding the value, it's the value, not the length, that is really important. And video, I think everybody's on the whole video bandwagon. And then if you tie that together with the value, that's going to tell you how long of that video. But also, I love the adding your own perspective to somebody else's content. I think it's amplifying their content. It's amplifying you. It gives you a very in the moment. Um, it gives you a very in the moment, authentic reaction. And I think, and you didn't say this, but I feel like this is what I'm picking up is that it doesn't have to be perfect. You
No.
don't have to be polished. I do think that this is where we're at right now from a social perspective, from a video perspective, we're all very forgiving, and being able to show your flaws, like you're talking about, like, are people going to be able to understand me? I have all sorts of ticks. Like I hide myself from podcasts. Like I have one eye that closes. Now everybody's going to focus on that. But like, like one eye that closes. I'm looking all over the place because I'm thinking about it. But if
Yeah.
I remove myself from it and it's just you and me having the conversation, all of a sudden, like I'm authentically connecting with an audience that isn't even in this very small room. So I love that. I love all those things that you've tied together. Is there a leader, an executive leader that you would say is a really great example for anybody to be like, hey, watch how this person is doing it. Watch how that person is doing it.
Well, given my background in video, right, when I started tapping into telling business stories, I came across, and you probably know Gary Vee,
Of
and he's
course.
the master of video. And I
Yes.
remember sitting and dreaming, well, one day I want to do that, and one day all of my thoughts are going to be captured on camera and edited for me, and they're going to be put out, out there.
Exactly.
So those are the big wish dreams, right? But I would always tell executives, you're traveling, you're going to meet a customer, you're on the go. It humanizes when you just share a little niblet, about that journey, right? You landed in some whatever country, right, to meet the customer. You close the deal. Is the pride, it's the conversations that you had, it's that showing a little bit of a life that you have as an executive. And of course it requires commitment. It's not easy to do this kind of
No.
approach that Gary Vee does, or you have to have resources to be able to do that for you, right? but
Yes.
this but this is a very good example from Gary. You understand, his personality, he's not gonna BS you around.
Yeah.
He's going to be straightforward with you, which translates in how he runs his advertisement agency, right? Which, when you go and work for him, you know what to expect. There's going to be no BS. So
Yes.
so that's the type of tie-in I see always, because one thing I can tell, because I'm not a Native American, I should say U.S. citizen, right? I wasn't born here.
Yeah.
Um, to me, the word corporate, when I first heard it, felt very cold. It felt like,
Yeah, it typically is.
yeah. And early on when I started my video producing business, and I set the goal to myself, which is still is, humanizing the companies. How can we humanize them so that this corporate doesn't feel so cold anymore? Show these executives, right? Show these leaders in the organization what they think, how these decisions are made, almost like a reality show. Not to that extent, but you get the point. Show that humanness that makes this company great.
Yeah.
And I think younger organizations, more current and modern organizations, are more open to this idea. And I think these old corporate, how we understand them, are much more reluctant in adopting these new strategies, this new approach in communicating and connecting with audiences, just because it's instilled so deep in their blood over those so many years, right? Unless there's a new and how to say, not groundbreaking, the word I'm looking for, a disruptive leader comes
Yeah.
to lead this company, they just continue staying in this, like, whatever corporate is to them.
Yeah, this corporate kind of sterile like view of things that
Yeah,
like we have to do things in a very certain way. But I think to your point, like we are living in a totally different world right now.
oh
We do need to humanize ourselves, and
yeah,
there's like there's real feelings behind corporate as well too,
yeah,
from at the executive leadership level all the way down to well, at all levels, I think.
yeah, yeah, 100%. So that's sort of my perspective, and I can give another example. Richard Branson, everybody knows Richard Branson, right? I mean, he is not afraid to show his that he's an adventurer, right? He's risk
Yeah.
taker. He's this, like, he's enjoying the wealth that he has, right? And when you tie it back to Virgin's brand, it's also, consumer focused, fun. You just see, you just kind of know intuitively that if I go on Virgin, airplanes, I will get the Branson sort of feel out of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
because it
I'm one
ties
step
together.
closer. I'm one
Yeah.
step closer to
And maybe I will meet him on the plane.
him. I
Yes.
don't think he splits and
No,
coach.
he probably doesn't. One can just hope and dream.
Exactly. I think that those are two really good examples. I'm right there with you in regards to like Gary Vee. I think that what he does so incredibly well. He is very no nonsense. He does not dress up for anybody. And I
Hmm.
mean that in the most positive way, right? And I
Yep.
think like that's really great visual and audio advice to be able to walk away with when you watch a Gary Vee, whether you like what he says or not. I think like there's so much to respect about the brand that he's built, the person that he is. Like I feel like I know a lot about his mom because I follow him because
Hmm.
he's genuinely talking like now he's not just this guy on the stage. He's not a guy that's written a book. He's not a guy that's has an agency. He's not that. He's like a kid who worked in his dad's shop who was supported by his mom, right? Like that, the fact that I even know that is wild. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, but it's so true.
Exactly.
It speaks to exactly what it is that you've been talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah.
This
It's
is
stories that you have as a person. Like, you're human in the end, and
yeah,
however you got in your career, and how, and there was a path that you should express and tell stories about. You should tell and enjoy the success of leading the company or founding the company, whatever the case is, right? By telling also the struggles that actually it took you to go through, right? And how
yeah,
that also builds probably the value system that you have as a person, right? How you're running the company, what you're demanding, not demanding, but what you're instilling as culture as well in the
yeah.
organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Well, I've got one final question for
Okay,
you because I've taken a ton of your time, but I've
that's okay,
absolutely
no problem.
adored it. If you knew then what you know now, what is the advice, marketing or non, advice that you give to yourself?
Okay, I'll give two, marketing and non, since you called out non. I was preparing to
Love
give
it.
a marketing advice. Uh, When it comes to marketing, um, don't think that whatever worked a year and a half ago is going to work right now or in the future.
Hmm.
You always have to innovate and stay up to date and really be on the cutting edge if you want to help your people that you work with, or imagine that your organization can stand out, right? So you always have to be up to date with everything. And then non-marketing thing is hiring people is difficult.
Yes.
So allocate time, not when you actually need that service. Look a
Yeah.
little bit more in the future. What will you need in 3 months in the growth of
Yeah.
your business? And start preparing for that now so that in 3 months you have the right resource in place. So those are the
Uh,
two tips.
I'm obsessed with that second one right now because I do think, like, so often when you're looking for that person that you need right now, you really rush to fill the seat versus take a beat to ensure that you've got the right person on the team. So, like, that's such great advice. Think 3 months in advance. Make sure that you just get started on building out your presence there for yourself, for executive leadership. It all ties back to your brand. You have dropped a ton of knowledge bombs. I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and just sharing your insight with us today.
Oh, I'm thankful actually to you for giving me the platform to actually share my thoughts and share my knowledge, with your audience. I really, really appreciate that, Katya.
Of course. Thank you so much. You know what time it is, my friends. It is key takeaway time. So let's dive into it. I will say I did keep notes on the side so I don't go down the rabbit hole. Anybody who knows me knows that I am the queen of rabbit holes. So let's get started. Key takeaway number one: harness the power of video for your personal brand. It works. Now, Loretta emphasized this pivotal role of video content in kind of enhancing your personal and corporate brands. And she rightly pointed out that video isn't just a trend, it is a powerful tool for storytelling and connecting authentically with your audience. And, in today's digital landscape where authenticity really reigns supreme, leveraging video can significantly amplify your brand's visibility and its credibility. It's not about perfection either. It's about showcasing your genuine self, which really resonates deeply with viewers and builds trust over time. And here's the thing: I know that it's scary. I know you're thinking it. I am saying it out loud. It is hard to put yourself out there. But remember, if you're being you, what's the worst that can happen? Dare to put yourself out there. Now, obviously, please be kind. This is a shared world, both physically and digitally. Now, key takeaway number two: you can build brand authority through executive personal branding. Now, there was a lot of discussion about just kind of the importance of executives establishing this strong personal brand. This isn't just about visibility, though. It's really about positioning them as thought leaders in your industry. And by having them share insights, values that align with your brand and personal stories, executives can kind of, not kind of, they do. That humanizes their brand and it fosters deeper connections with stakeholders in the community alike. In essence, it's a bit of a double whammy. It boosts their personal credibility. That was a mouthful. Sorry about that. But it also enhances the company's reputation, making it much more relatable and trustworthy in the eyes of customers and partners. And while we were focused on executives in this episode, I'd say that it's not just for executives. I want you to take a look at your internal ambassadors. They are great at doing the same thing. I like to think of the execs as the ones that kind of give you the title connections with thought leadership. And ambassadors of the company can really end up showing the heart of the company. So when you leverage both executives and your internal ambassadors, well, I already said it. Double whammy, my friends. That's really what it is. Now, key takeaway number three, my final key takeaway, is continuous innovation in marketing strategies is really one of the keys to success. A crucial insight from our discussion was really the need for this kind of continuous innovation in marketing strategies. I love that Loretta highlighted that what worked in the past may not necessarily be effective today or in the future. Which, I think that's hard as a marketer, right? We want to be able to leverage what we've done before and execute on it. That's not to say that you can't do what you've done before, but nothing is copy and paste. So, what this really requires is us as marketers to really stay agile, constantly evaluate new trends and technologies, and adapt your strategies to meet kind of this evolving consumer behaviors and market dynamics, whether you're B2B, D2C, or you're going direct to consumer. Well, I just spelled that out right. D2C, direct to consumer, or whether you're talking specifically to the consumers. Now, embracing innovation allows businesses to stay ahead of the curve, differentiate themselves in competitive markets, and maintain relevance with like kind of the constant change of this digital age. I am just tripping over my words, but it does allow us to stay ahead in this digital age. It's part of the reason also for this podcast. This continuous learning is the name of the game to successful marketing campaigns. And this is how I stay up to date, wanting to keep you up to date as well, too. Now, what did you take away from this episode? I'd love to chat about it. Follow the pod on the Let's Talk Marketing LinkedIn page, or if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment on this episode. A very special thank you to my podcast editor, Johnny Ike. Thanks for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya, signing off.